Welcome to the Pixel Professor podcast, where we take an academic deep dive, not a shallow dive, but a deep dive into the cultural and artistic phenomenon that is video games. The phenomenon is, right? Singular, that's right. Is video games. Well,
are they a phenomenon?
Maybe they should be, if they're not. It is July 3rd, almost July 4th, hence the topic of today's discussion.
Ooh.
I don't know if you got that about the reason why we were doing this discussion today.
Oh, that makes that does make sense.
Yeah, it's meaningful to some. And I'm your tenor, and I'm joined by Swift.
That's me,
the great patriot, Swift.
Yep, the patriarch of patriotism.
The patriotic patriarch.
Yep, that's what they call me.
Yeah, it sure is. That's what everybody says.
Mm-hmm.
So, Swift, first question always is, what are you playing and how am I ruining it?
Well, I think it's clear that your graphics card has done good work over its lifetime.
I bought it for not very much, and it's a refurbished old guy, but it is giving up the ghost. We'll see if it makes it through this podcast. TVH.
I think that it was furbished.
It was.
And then it was refurbished. And now it is time to be post-furbished.
Unfurbished, if you will. Unfurbished.
Yeah. You might, frame it and put it on the wall. It still has some visual punch to it. It's just not for video game quality.
Maybe. Yeah, the visual punch will be us seeing it.
I am finally just embracing my identity as a millennial, and I am playing Fortnite.
And more than just the couple of times that we played together, obviously, because your level's gone way up.
I'm at level 57 right now, which I think that's the highest level I've gotten in anything ever.
Even including Helldivers? What did you end up with in Helldivers?
Including my education. I don't think I got to a level 57 person in my education. So
wow. So you need a Fortnite thing on your wall, the equivalent of the big. Wow, my headphones are ringing sometimes. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I've got my degree in Fortnite, and then the nice thing is that in just a couple of weeks, it's going to be the next season, and I'm going to lose it all. So,
that happens. There's a new season.
Yeah, there's new seasons every amount of time.
And you lose your level? You go back, everyone goes back to level 1?
Yep.
Oh, what an interesting mechanic. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of brilliant. Because usually you achieve a certain thing and either you have to start a new character but the problem is when you start your new character, you're still better than everybody else. And this way everyone gets on it. Man, talk about balancing challenge and ability. Fortnite has figured out how to do that thing, haven't they?
They really have.
Wow. That's amazing. So Fortnite is your game of choice now. It has become your game of choice.
I've also returned to Deep Rock Galactic Survivor.
Oh,
there's still a couple of levels that I have not beaten. So I need to. Well, what about you? What are you playing these days?
Mavin and I, we had a recording session yesterday of Project Zomboid. That is, I think, the longest I've ever sat down and played a video game straight. And it was because he's traveling. And anyway, we were trying to put some footage together. And we did a ton of recording. And we accomplished a whole lot. It is amazing how much you can feel like you genuinely did in a video game. We didn't really kill, how 500 zombies and move our base to a new location, but we did. We did both of those things, So and it was a really hard, we had to plan and scheme, and a couple of things failed, and it was genuine problem solving. And I had a good idea once.
Ooh, that is noteworthy.
Which is strange. I'm usually one of the obstacles. And yesterday,
it's a good role to play.
That's my role, I think, either to myself or to others, as we've learned. But anyway,
so what day are you on in recording?
29, and it's a 100-day survival thing. So we're a little over a quarter of the way.
Nice.
And it's really rewarding. It feels like it's such a different thing to say we're gonna not die, because you know how easy it is to die in that game.
Oh yeah,
it's just the stakes feel really high, and they get higher every day.
Right, because if you die on day 55, then it's like, well, now what do I do?
That was a fun 55 hours of my life I'm not getting back. So it's really cool. It's really fun. And then of course the games we tried to play last night, all of which crashed on my poor card. And
weird.
So that was rough. But
was rough.
So those are fun. Highly recommend Project Zomboid, Fortnite. Obviously we reviewed Fortnite. We should do a Project Zomboid review. That would be a fun one.
Yeah, we should.
To try.
Let's do it.
So today, in the spirit of independence and patriotism, tomorrow being the 4th of July, and us, if we get this done in time, this podcast episode should be released on the 4th of July. So
happy 4th,
and
everyone.
I'm sure everyone's going to be sitting around eating hot dogs and doing the number one American thing you can be doing, and that's listening to the Pixel Professor podcast.
Yep. As
a Pixel Professor podcast patriot.
Quadruple P's.
It's quadruple, yep. Just like we all are. So, and actually, on that subject, we'll see how this goes. Like, we have some topics, we have some questions. I'm actually really intrigued by those. We've actually had some discussions about the state of affairs of our government and things like that. And I think there's, at least from my angle, I want to stay at least somewhat politically neutral here, but still at least sort of own up to or notice, at least from our perspective as video game connoisseurs and players, are in our world, how does the video game genre, how does the video game medium reflect the political situation in our country? And it's funny, so for me, I actually can claim a citizenship of Germany and of the United States of America. So I've always found this interesting sort of dichotomy in myself, this sort of dual feeling, like in terms of patriotism, and but my parents and my wife's parents were in the military. So a great deal of love for both countries, which is an interesting thing considering how different they are. But the first question. So we're gonna have a few questions. The first is going to be just a little bit of fun. We want to hopefully the whole thing is going to be a fun discussion. But we're going to talk about or not. Like that's our goal is to not be fun. That's a good point. This is a scholarly podcast. Yeah, and education and scholarship cannot be fun. If there's one thing we've learned,
zero fun, sir.
So that being said, we're going to talk about each of our list of top 5 games about adjacent to like American patriotism. That is not a good thumbnail title for our top 5 games, our top 5 America games, our top 5 American games. What do we call this? We'll come up with a good list for this top 5 list.
No, I think that was it.
That was that whole thing. Yeah. That whole 5-minute exposition I did on the title of the top 5. So we'll talk about our top 5, and then we're going to just talk about like maybe how games have changed to reflect patriotism, and then just I don't know, just think about what the ultimate American video game would be or something like that at the end. So anyway, stay tuned for that. And by listening to that, your income will increase and you'll lose weight and become more attractive.
All of the above.
Stay tuned for those kinds of things. So here's what I'm thinking for our top 5. I think we each present from 5 to 1. So like you'll give me your game number 5, and then I'll give my 5, and then 4, up to the first. And then maybe at the end of this, we'll come up with the Pixel Professor top 10, depending on our overlap. We'll have to see. Yeah?
Love it.
Is that acceptable to you,
I think
Dr. Swift?
That is acceptable to me. I would prefer if you don't, don't call me Dr. Swift anymore, but call me level 57 Fortnite Swift.
57 Swift. Okay, that's a way better. We should do that in academia, really. I mean, we only have 3 levels when you think about it. And once you become like the professor part anyway, right? That's lame.
There's associate professor, assistant professor,
assistant, associate, full,
and then pixel professor is the next one.
Oh, okay, so 4 levels. Yeah. But imagine if we came up with, just like in Helldivers, you're like sergeant, and then you're like a master sergeant, but then there's all those interesting additions
Yeah.
We should figure out a way to do that in academia. It'd be so much more fun. Anyway, okay, level 57 Swift. What is your number 5 top 5 games about America?
I'm trying to decide whether to do whether the one that is the least serious should be number 5 or if it should be number. I think it should be number 5.
I think it should be your interest in the like. How much do you like?
So then
your
this is
top 5?
Definitely number 5.
Okay.
It honestly should not be anywhere on the list, but it's just too good.
Even better
to not include.
Even better.
Okay, so let me. How do you?
Are we going to get
technology?
We're going to get multi. I don't know. I don't do that.
Screen.
Yep. There's a screen share. You actually have multimedia, and I do not, and I feel like I'm not as cool. Oh my goodness! I've heard about this one. I've never played it. Have you played this?
I have not, but with my research, it is Christian Founders 3D Adventure. Discover the Christian beliefs of our founding fathers by playing Uncle Sam in a 3D game.
It is 3D. Unless we've got oh dear. Look at those smooth graphics.
To the flag of the United States of America.
It's like Wolfenstein America. You're jumping through American flags?
And so you go up to each lesson. This dude already has 26 points.
This is amazing. What do they have a special name? Like 26 freedom points or? See, this is why games like Helldivers exist.
Yes.
This is amazing. Oh, you got armor.
You just leveled up. Got some armor.
Who's shooting at him? Oh dear.
The terrorists, I think.
Oh, are you serious? No way.
And then you get to read little blurbs about each person in U.S. history.
Okay.
And applause. This person fell into communism. What a bummer.
That's terrible. That's the worst possible outcome. This is incredible.
You can learn about
Uncle Sam.
Invisible Hand didn't quite help him. This
dude needs to learn how. It's hard to watch someone play poorly, and I'm saying that as a person who often plays poorly and asks people to watch him do so. Whoa!
Thomas
There's
Paine.
a lot of violence in this game.
Samuel Adams. Oh wait!
He's sliding down. Is that ice?
Oh, that's cool.
I can't really. This is like Mario Brothers when you jump through like the different like Mario 64 when you jump into the paintings, except you can't jump into the paintings.
But they give you true false questions about.
I cannot tell what is going on. Like, what is your actual objective?
Oh, wow. Leap of Faith game level.
There are different levels, and there are lots of different levels.
See.
And then you choose the lesson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
And you start with the Pledge of Allegiance every time. This is terrible. I think we've gotten enough of this one.
Yep, I think we've got the idea. So, if you're looking for pure, undiluted, straight into your bloodstream patriotism, I don't think you can get better than that.
That is, if you want to totally combine dogma and my word, that's crazy. If you want an unportrayal, I was going to say inaccurate, an inaccurate, just a portrayal of the founding of our country, there is one for you.
It is certainly a portrayal.
A portrayal. Yes.
Yes.
We are not necessarily recommending these games.
Oh no, I'm recommending that game.
Oh, you are. Go play.
Everyone needs to go buy that. It's probably came free on your Encarta software CD that you got in 1996, but it will be the best 7 or 8 hours of your life.
Yeah. You'll come away so much more American. They should just put that on the citizenship thing. You have to play this game and beat it, and then you become an American citizen. Easy.
It's interesting to see a game that is so obviously bad, and also so obviously trying to make a point, teach a lesson.
Yes.
And I think we're going to see some other games that are definitely trying to they're trying to say something, but they're able to say it a little bit. They're able to say it better because the game is better.
I see. Well, and I tried to split the difference a little bit on this for me. So I tried to decide. I was trying to get as close as I could think of to like, well, what is a game that is American or patriotic or whatever.
Yeah.
But tried to pick among the games that I have played and I have loved. So I actually followed the rules, and they're my 5 favorites. 5 of my favorite games that are America adjacent, and
I see.
We've already broken them. That's okay. That's that's
just
what's
wait.
more American than that.
Just wait until you get to number 1.
Oh, I cannot wait. I cannot. So we better hurry through this. So my number 5, and this is in the spirit of everything that is happening right now in the soccer world. I'm a huge soccer fan, being raised raised in Germany and played soccer since I was about 6 or 7. And so I love the sport, but I also had a early passion, like 1994, fell in love with the U.S. national team because they had those amazing, have you seen those denim jerseys with the stars coming across them? I saw those jerseys in the first time I had ever seen them in a game. And their jerseys made me feel patriotism. And I was like, I didn't even know Americans could play soccer. They weren't as good at it as the rest of the world, but 94 was a big year because they actually had some success in the 1994 Olympics, beating Colombia famously, which led to a tragedy. Well, I'll let you look that up. But but the United States national team has been a part of my life at least for that long. So we're talking 30 years. Yes, I love the U.S. national team. So
from when you were negative 20 until today.
Exactly. Well, good. That's good math. And then I love the game FIFA. Always have played it since '97 or so when I first bought my first copy of that. And so they used to release its own standalone World Cup game. And I don't know any U.S. national teams that wouldn't love more than to any U.S. national team fans or U.S. players who would want anything more than to have the U.S. win a World Cup, which is unlikely, less unlikely every year, I'd say, except for what happened in the Copa America just a couple of days ago. But we're not bitter or heartbroken about that at all.
Offsides only counts sometimes.
That ref, that was man, that. Okay, no. Okay, so but FIFA World Cup used to be. Then it became like downloadable content for the FIFA game. Now it's just kind of woven into it. But there was a version of the game. When was the one that was in South Korea and Japan? I think that was one of my favorite standalone versions of the World Cup, FIFA World Cup games. And me and my friends would play it together, and so it felt patriotic because I got to play as a favorite. At the time, I'm sure it was Landon Donovan. I got to play as Landon Donovan as an American soccer player, and then I got to bring my national team to World Cup glory, which, who knows? In 2026, the World Cup is here in Canada and Mexico, and maybe miracles can happen. So anyway, so that to me, sports, love sports, patriotism, sports. Soccer is not necessarily considered the American sport. But to me, it
interesting.
I love how that fits both in the world and in how I feel about this country. So anyway, there you go. FIFA World Cup number 5. So
that's only number 5 for you.
That's number 5.
That's the soccer game.
I could bring that higher. I tried not to fret too much over the numbers.
Well, you should.
All 5 of these games are wonderful. I should have, because you obviously fretted. You have fretted. Anyway, yep. There's fraughtness in the fretting. 4. What's your number 4?
So this is all of the World War II games.
Yes.
Those are just like pure patriotism. And there's just so many of them.
Yes.
That is a game.
Do you have a favorite?
I don't really. There's one that I can't remember the name of, so I'm not going to mention that one.
Yep, good idea.
In the bundle, I'm going to include things like Call of Duty, which is not a World War II game, I think.
Is there one? No, I don't think so.
I think they might have like a World War II version.
Yeah.
And Rainbow Six. So Rainbow Six is decidedly not
So way to
World War
go
II,
to talk
but
about the
war
World War
games.
II thing and then bring up two games that aren't really World War II.
That
But
aren't
yep,
World War II
yep,
games.
yep.
But it's just kind of that general idea of military games.
Yes. And there's the one that the U.S. Army actually helped develop and make, America's Army. And that one was a free-to-play thing. I used to love playing that one. That was kind of fun, actually, when it came out. My favorite and I love World War II games, and I almost put several of them on here as well. But Medal of Honor, that one was the one that I just loved. And the score, was that the one that Hans Zimmer did the score for? Anyway, it's great score. I know Hans Zimmer did at least one of the Call of Duty games as well, but some famous composer also did Medal of Honor. Anyway, Medal of Honor was the one that for me, this is another connection, like the Germany connection, really fascinated with World War II history. So yeah, good one. So World War II games that aren't World War II, U.S. Army games. Is that your number games. 4?
Yeah.
U.S. military games?
I think so. U.S. military games.
My number 4 is Assassin's Creed 3. Did you ever play Assassin's Creed 3?
No, but it's set in early America.
Yes, and you get to build like your own little homestead and stuff. And so there's a base building element too, which I love. A game with a good base building element. It's early days of all of that, so there's not great base building mechanics, but they're good. And you actually get to go to Boston and go to New York and be in like early America days of Assassin's Creed 3. So there's a little bit of
it's pretty cool
early American history in there too. So I love that one. Okay. So number 3 for you.
This is another package deal. And they're actually going to be part of the same package.
I do feel like you're cheating a little bit, but yes.
I do too. But they're too similar.
Okay.
It's Civilization, the Civ series, and SimCity.
SimCity? You're gonna have to justify SimCity as America to me.
Because
I guess they are uniquely American zoning laws. Like we don't do this whole zoning. Like in Europe, they didn't have the 3 different. I guess okay.
It's that what makes you feel more connected to your country than trying to run your own city and realizing that actually it's kind of hard.
Then polluting the atmosphere and
inviting giant lizards. So there's a little bit of a stretch there.
But that's the best part.
But Civilization also, in America, we're so big on the idea of America as a country and what it stands for. And I think there's not much more patriotic thing to do than to learn about other civilizations and learn, that's an interesting way it doesn't all have to be House and Senate. You can also have, other forms of government that are good. And
so true. Well, my number 3?
Yes.
Is Civilization.
Oh,
how crazy is that? That's amazing. Minus, that's exactly what I somehow got your list. On the other side of the country. Anyway, so Civilization. I love that game as well. I love, first of all, like Sid Meier had to choose specific strengths, right? And originally there was just the one. You could be America, and like George Washington was your leader, or Abraham Lincoln, or whoever was the first. And now there's several different versions of America you can play, where it's like,
ooh,
and you get special units that are particularly American. And I always love that I could be America, but still build the pyramids, right? Be America, but start at the dawn of civilization. Just an interesting thing to like be allowed to be that country, whatever country it is, and focus on whatever it is that you want to, like exploration and not just the militaristic aspect, which is what I often think of when it comes to patriotism. Is military, like you said, and that kind of stuff. But America is so much more than that. I think we talked about that, like when I got to go to the Kennedy Space Center, and it was like, look, like this is a worldwide thing, and we're doing it here. I love that. So anyway, Civilization is also my number 3, one of my favorite games of all time. Very great choice. Okay, what's your number 2?
Number 2 is a game that I have a lot of nostalgia for. I haven't played it in years. I did get a Choose Your Own Adventure book set.
Whoa!
Inspired by this game.
Oh, cool.
Just like in the last 5 years. But it's Oregon Trail.
I almost put Oregon Trail on my list. I didn't play it enough. I remember playing it sometimes on the computers at school, and I remember dying of dysentery
so many
every
times.
time, and just getting tired of that and deciding I didn't want to die of dysentery anymore, and played SimCity instead. As a matter of fact.
So, did you play Oregon Trail 1?
I don't remember. I don't remember which one it was. So
was it the one where you're just like a little green guy?
Yes.
And you
That's
like
the one.
when you go hunting and you're standing in the middle and you turn around and shoot the little.
That's the one.
The bison and stuff.
Is
that's
that
Oregon
one?
Trail 1. Yeah,
that's the one. That's the only one I've ever played. There's more than one.
I played quite a bit of that, and then I also played Oregon Trail 2.
Oh, I didn't know there was an Oregon Trail 2. Is that one set
definitely
in
was.
1970s hippie Oregon, like you're in Eugene?
I wish. That would be top of the list.
Yeah.
The top of the list, my top of the list right now is much better than that, but it would have rivaled that.
Oh.
No, it's just a better game. It's just it looks less like MS-DOS and it looks more like Windows 95.
Oh, a huge upgrade. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like there's actually some graphics there. Well, this is actually interesting. My number 2 is also a Frontier. Mine's more Wild Wild West, but I guess you could say Oregon Trail is 2. Mine's Red Dead Redemption, either 1 or 2. I guess I cheated on this one too. Like it is kind of a package deal.
Inexcusable.
I officially, because I didn't want to cheat, chose Red Dead Redemption 1 because I have not finished Red Dead Redemption 2, and I wanted to choose a game that I had played all the way through because I want to follow the rules.
I don't. See, I'm more American.
Yeah,
you're more German.
Sure, exactly. Order is important to me.
Yeah,
and you're just wild. Even in the Wild West, I'm following
shooting
rules.
From the hip.
And you're. Yep, you sure are. You sure are.
I haven't even made a list of games yet.
You're just coming up with it. You're improvising. That's what they said about Americans in World War II, right? That's one of the reasons why Americans are so successful, because no one was better at chaos than Americans. So that's true. Okay, but yeah, Red Dead Redemption, The Wild Frontier, which
that's awesome.
Which has had a huge resurgence, I'd say, in popularity, maybe because of video games, chicken or the egg kind of a thing, or some of the recent TV shows and stuff about the Wild West. These things go in and out of popularity, I say, as a genre. But anyway, and that is one of my German cousins, for example. That's the aspect. He's never been to the United States, but the aspect of America that he wants to see the most is the wide open West. My mother, when she first moved to the United States, was like 19 or so, and talks about driving from Los Angeles to Utah in the car, and while they were going through Nevada, feeling so unsettled and really in danger, because if the car broke down was her number one fear. There's nobody or nothing for miles, just being out there in the wide open space of the desert and the West. It's a unique thing. It's a uniquely American. Yes and no. I mean, there's other spaces like that in the world, but in terms of our Western culture, and Red Dead Redemption is that the cowboy thing
captures it.
The cowboy outlaw thing, So, but anyway, number 2. So we're both on the frontier for our number 2. Number 1 for you. What's your number 1?
This is a game that is more like, I think there's nothing that says that you are more involved with something than wanting to see it overcome its difficulties. And so the game, like I think the easier thing to do would be to say, there's actually a truck simulator that's set in America that I almost put on the list, but I didn't. I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, because I think that the context of this is important.
Okay.
Rather than just kind of giving up on the country, being able to just be willing to see it through, even as it digs itself into a bit of a hole.
Yes.
And it's not all by itself and digging itself into this particular hole being climate change.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Frostpunk.
Oh, how interesting. You made Frostpunk your number one. Here's the interesting thing about that. So, and if any of you have not played Frostpunk, there are few games in the world that will put you in the face of like lose-lose situations like Frostpunk does. Like you're in charge. It's post-apocalyptic America, right? Frostpunk is,
and it's set in a time when you are. It's an ice apocalypse.
Yeah,
type
the
of
world
thing.
is frozen.
Yeah,
And you're trying to survive.
Manage scarce resources and build a community, and come up with laws and make choices about how you're going to do different things to keep your people alive, or to sacrifice some of them to go exploring. I mean, it's very much a frontier game.
Yes.
But it's also it's the next frontier. It's the frontier after we've destroyed everything. And we're trying to rebuild America.
Now, we did not confer on our lists beforehand. So that's why it's interesting to me that my number one is also post-apocalyptic. And I actually wanted to talk about, like, to me, part of the next part of the discussion about like how video games reflect patriotism in America.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting to me is how many of those games are sort of sci-fi post-apocalyptic. What happens when we take our pride, our sometimes our lack of care for each other in the land that we live on to an extreme. And there's lots of different ways we could do that. Video games have a way, unlike anything else, even more so than film, putting you in a situation where you get to exist in that space and learn to either like survive or make it better. And we'll talk more about that later too. But for me, my number one is Fallout.
Interesting.
Fallout is one of my, if not my favorite game series that there is anyway. And of course, it's not our version of the United States of America, but it is a post-nuclear wasteland version of, it asks the question, what does the United States of America look like 200 years after it's destroyed itself in a nuclear war? And so that's a really interesting question. And of course, that's the setting. And in Fallout 4, which is my favorite of the games, you actually you're in Boston, and you can become a Minuteman, and it even has, it salutes George Washington and a lot of early American leaders and stuff like that. And the idea is justice and patriotism and some of our key values, helping each other. The Minutemen are an interesting subgroup in the wasteland because their main objective is to help one another, and that's seen as an American patriotic value, is helping one another, right? So anyway, I find that interesting that they would pick that and go back to that. So I think in so many ways, again, even though we didn't confer, what an interesting segue into the next discussion. That being said, just to review, so you're 5. Number 5 was the 3D Christian, what is it called? 3D
Christian Founders 3D Adventure.
Okay, number 4.
War games.
American war games. 3.
Civ and
okay.
SimCity.
Yeah. 2.
Oregon Trail.
1 was
Frostpunk.
Okay, so for me, 5, FIFA World Cup. 4, Assassin's Creed 3. 3, Civ. 2, Red Dead Redemption. 1, Fallout. Okay, so and this is a little bit looser of a discussion. I want to preface this by saying I did check, for example, in preparation for today's podcast, I wanted to review some statistics. And the main statistic that I was interested in was how do Americans view America? And Gallup did a poll, was it 2023? When was this poll? This is a really interesting, 2022, excuse me. And they did a poll, and essentially they asked the country, are you extremely proud, very proud, down to not proud, I think was the bottom category, to be an American. And back in the early 2000s, and actually by like 2002, something like 91% of Americans were extremely proud to be... Is that the right number? No. They were either extremely proud or very proud. The top two.
Yeah.
90%. and 70% were extremely proud. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
90% either extremely or very. Now it's 65. We're down to 60.
Ooh.
That's like a 25%, right? Am I doing the math right? 25% drop, essentially 25, 26% drop in people who feel either extremely proud or very proud. And what's is
That's
particularly
what, like a C minus?
yeah, and what's or D, right? Like 60s.
Yeah.
And in terms of those who feel extremely proud, in 2002, 2003, when it hit its peak, it was 70% felt extremely proud, top level, to be an American, which is, when you consider that, I don't know how that compares to other countries, but that seems insane to me. That seems so high. And that number has dropped to 38%. So it's and 65% feeling either extremely or very. So over half of this country still feels at least very proud to be an American, which in some ways I think that's an important number to know, because at least to me,
Interesting.
that actually I don't know that a lot of the people that I see actually feel that way. I know a lot of the high school age kids that I know, I'd say almost all of them don't feel that way. And that's totally anecdotal. But even when it comes to things like the we just watched this in your Christian 3D game there. It starts every level with the Pledge of Allegiance. We start school with the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Just like everywhere else. The kids don't. No one's told they're going to be forced to stand. I remember as a kid, like, you're going to stand, and it was never I never questioned it either. I mean, growing up in the military, every movie started with the Star Spangled Banner. Like, we all stood, and there was like all the AFIs and military bases, they'd have the Star Spangled Banner before they showed a movie. Like, that was my world. Like, it was Pledge of Allegiance, It was Star Spangled Banner. Now they still read it. There's still an announcement. They read the Pledge of Allegiance. Very few kids stand and recite it. And I don't know. In my school, the majority of the school is not Native American per se, or at least their parents aren't. And I don't know how that plays into it. Native American, as in not Native American, but they're immigrants.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that very well, but either way, I'd say the mood has shifted very far, and continues to shift in the direction of not viewing America the way we used to. And that's not meant to be, I'm not saying how I feel either about the whole thing. Again, I have such a love and just a mixed feeling about so much of what goes on. But our main discussion is to say, how do video games reflect that change? And I'm talking from my perspective of playing video games in the 80s, when everybody loved America and everything was about the US versus the Soviet Union, and it was all action stars. It was Chuck Norris, and it was Tom Cruise and Top Gun, and this faceless communist enemy. So like when you played the old Top Gun games, you'd fight this faceless communist enemy. Even the sci-fi games like Contra, you were this American hero shooting these laser guns, destroying this big bad, evil, obviously communist-based sort of alien menace, right? Like, it was everything was that. It was America versus the world, and America always won. Now, on the flip side, we've got games like Helldivers, which didn't make either of our lists. I was actually interested to see that. Like, to me, Helldivers isn't American, but it is obviously making fun of America, right? It's
pure
obviously
patriotism.
making fun of that pure patriotism. We got to spread democracy, and we're gonna use all the tricks in our book to make you go out there and fight bugs, because, and that's the funny thing about it. Like, I don't know what use big massive bugs have for democracy, but that's the rallying cry, and maybe they do. Maybe Anyway, so any initial thoughts on like games how gaming has changed over the years in terms of how it reflects America and how people feel about it?
It's so funny that you bring up Chuck Norris, because one of the games that I almost added to my list is called Broforce.
Yes, I've never played it, but I know it. Yes, absolutely.
It's a side-scrolling game where you are Rambo and the Terminator and Chuck Norris, and you rescue hostages and blow up terrorists.
Like Duke Nukem is another example of that same kind of a game. Duke, absolutely set in that same kind of a universe. Absolutely.
That and Helpdivers, and kind of looking a little bit more critically at what are we actually saying when we're saying we're the best,
Yeah.
or what exactly does it mean to say to free somebody?
Yes.
You know, to free a country. You know,
Yeah.
what are we spreading freedom, and being a little bit more nuanced and looking at that. And then I think it's interesting how many games and movies and so many things in culture are focused on post-apocalyptic settings, because it seems like the thought is, well, it seems like we're about to crash this train off the side of a cliff. How do you live with a train at the bottom of a cliff?
Yeah.
And how can you survive like that? Which is, and the video games are following. There's, I mean, all these, The Division, Tom Clancy's Division. That's such a, and even The Last of Us.
Yes,
that's very
Last
much
of Us
set
on the list.
in America.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
post-apocalyptic as well.
That's such a popular genre right now that I think it does reflect a mentality, or a little bit of a shift.
Is it a hopelessness? That's what I wonder. Like, maybe we've talked about this before, whether it was on here. Such an interesting phenomenon. World War One happens. World War One happened in a time of a really interesting movement in art that went from things like Impressionism to Expressionism. And Expressionism in many ways is defined by extremes, and music is turning to extremes. Strauss and a lot of it is going one direction, a sort of neo-romantic, really violent, over-the-top opera. The subject matter gets so dark, in both in art song and in opera and in visual art. It just moves from this idealistic, 18th century, very classical, idealistic, everything's happy and flowery because the aristocracy wants to present this sort of image, right? 19th century is all about middle class, things are hard, things are bad. The artists in charge shifts, like the people paying those bills shifts. And in the early 20th century, rules are thrown out the window, right? And I believe it was Richard Strauss who had just written these two just ridiculously heavy, violent operas around the time that World War One breaks out. Writes a letter, and I should look this up. And if I have to correct myself, I'll do it in the show notes. But I believe it was him who wrote this letter asking a colleague and a friend, "Did we start this? Was this our fault? Did we? Because nobody knew why they were fighting in World War One. Like, even now, when we describe what happened to this person shot this person and this Kaiser and this leader and whatever, it's all very convoluted. And if you asked just any soldier, what are you fighting for in World War One? It was, I don't know, my country, I guess, in terms of this idea of patriotism. And there is this darkness that hung over the whole world. And again, I don't think they were the only artists because art in general after World War One takes a huge flip towards classicism and stuff like that. And same thing happens after World War II in this country. When you think of the idealistic thing that was like the 50s and 60s, at least for a very specific group, right? It was everything's great, everything's rosy, everything's happy. We just went through this dark thing we want to present. And then, so I don't know. I just think so much of our art is a chicken or the egg thing. Our video games, post-apocalyptic, super violent, so many of them, and I like some of those too. Our TV shows are often those video games, then set and turned into TV shows. I don't know. Are we creating a world? Are we so steeped in this post-apocalyptic, we're doomed idea every day and everything that we see, or is that the only way we can cope because of what's actually happening?
Yeah.
I don't know. We didn't talk about that before. I don't know. Have you ever noticed that or have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that games like Civilization and SimCity, which I think are more on the positive side.
Agreed.
Of we can build this cool thing. That those are still popular.
Yep.
But they're not the most I mean, there's kind of the two strands. There's kind of the like, let's build this cool thing, and then there's also the other side, which is like, we've destroyed everything. Now what?
Yeah, are they trying to be prophetic? Are they trying? Is Fallout trying to say? Is Frostpunk trying to say, if we keep on this path, this is where we're going? Are we going either? Is it a nuclear holocaust? Is it climate change? There's so many different ways that we're hurting ourselves. And then there are the games that are designed to be so escapist, cozy games, the extreme other side. They're designed, and those games I think used to be designed for small children, but are now being used in an actual therapeutic way to help people escape from. I don't know what statistics seem to show. People are down. People are down about who they are and where they are. They're identifying as an American is not the positive thing it used to be, and there's a lot of blame being thrown around. A lot of there's always been mistrust in politicians, but the millennial generation in particular has shown that maybe the greatest mistrust in politics in history. Politics has gone from this thing where it was seen as a way to serve to something that's so corrupt we want to stay away from it. And that void has not been filled, I would say, in a positive way per se in politics. Right. So I find video games as an art, they are one of, if not the most popular art form in the world right now besides film. And if we look at what's being released every day, the absurdism in it, the post-apocalyptic aspect of what it is, there's a lot of especially stuff related to, I mean, the games we didn't mention, like Grand Theft Auto could make the list. There's some really ridiculous patriotic characters in that representing what's become sort of a farce in American patriotism. And that's a whole other discussion. There's the same thing in games like Saints Row and games like BioShock, and all presenting different either alternate reality or post-apocalyptic versions of this country. I'm not seeing many and when you make one that's positive America, Civ is a good one, but it's still in or SimCity in a specific sort of world. You have to go to an extreme like Christian Founders, 3D game or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the time period of like the moon race and like the excitement. I think the video games that would have come out of that time period, or if we were to kind of copy that over to today, if we were instead of fighting against corruption and fighting against climate change and fighting against all these kind of existential crises that capitalism seems to collapse every couple of years and we have to kind of rebuild it. If instead we were focused on building a civilization on Mars, I think we'd have a lot more terraforming Mars games.
Yeah.
We'd have a lot more games like Ad Astra or a Sim City on Mars.
Yeah.
And there would be a whole variety of things where you're like building a civilization on a planet. How do you get there? But we don't have a lot of that. We just have a bunch of games of how to survive here on Earth.
Yeah.
After it's all dead. But that'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to imagine. That's one of the things I think that video games can help us do a lot better than most forms of art, is imagine a better world. And play it and make choices in it. We've gotten really good at imagining a worse world.
Yes.
But it'd be cool if we could imagine a better world. Like what would it look like if we didn't have a crumbling in America, we didn't have a crumbling power grid.
Yeah.
And we were all on our own little like pods of power and it was all sustainable and like how would the world work? And we could play that out in a game a lot cheaper than actually doing it.
Well, that's a perfect setup. So that's the last question. And this is, I don't know if that's the direction you're headed, but that's the direction I wanted to head, at least when it came to what would you like to see in games about America. And that's it for me. And I think the question is, to me, what does a successful America look like? I think if you asked most people, they'd have different answers. They'd be very generic responses. But I don't know that we can define that, because one of the beautiful things about this country is I don't think there's any country in the world that is as much of a melting pot as this one is. And this is one of my discussions that I've had with some of my German cousins too. Like this idea that there's some things that they've been able to solve in that country that I think we'd love to solve here. But a lot of it is because I think, though they also have a large diversity in Germany as well, it's a country the size of Oregon with the population of California. They have like 80 million people. We have 330 million people, and from everywhere, and culturally and religiously. That's not an adverb, is it? But in all different ways, we agree. We find there's a lot more ways we can disagree than agree. And so when we try to force religion into politics, and we try to force certain ideologies into our politics or just into our interactions, but aren't games an opportunity to create scenarios where, like, I always wondered what would Fallout look like if you could fix it. The goal of Fallout is to survive and to pick an option that's going to hurt some and help others, which is a pretty realistic thing. Frostpunk too. Like Frostpunk is a pretty bleak view, and your main goal is to survive. That would be I'd pose that question to people building games. Like, present us with a relevant feeling situation in this country, and help us game out a solution. And that's too vague. But I'd love to see us be able to take some of these bleak situations and build. And as Civ, in some ways, provides that ish.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on like games you want to see, American games you want to see? What would that look like for you? Is it all just SimCity?
So, well,
it's a great game.
So there's this game that I have not played, but I really want to, called Terra Nil. And the idea is you're building like a sustainable system in kind of like a untamed wilderness type of thing. And I think that's the direction that I'm interested in. But I think it's difficult to that's so far away from where we are that it's a little bit too fantastical.
Yes.
A pristine wilderness that we are settling well.
Yes.
Like we kind of, that ship has sailed. We done settled.
Yeah.
Now we need to, like, how could you transition from the consuming, polluting economy we have now to one that can last for a while? I think that'd be a fascinating game. I like systems. I like,
me too.
Governments and government strategy. So it's going to be that's a lot bigger than, something like some like base building game.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love that kind of, and maybe it could be a base building game within this system. Like, how do you build a neighborhood that can be part of this larger system, but also separate enough that it's not part of this huge polluting.
Yeah.
I think that kind of thing.
Yeah. With this many minds, if there was even a little bit of a sense of optimism about what we could be, and maybe a game is a place we can create that. I mean, in a game, you have to set parameters, and you have to have tasks, and you have to have challenge. And we can I think when we look at the game, because I think about all of these things as games, that is the United States of America. If it's a system, it's got a game mechanic in it, right? A corporation is a game. We were talking about this a couple of days ago, like the idea that a board is like a D&D party, and they all have their different roles, and maybe they're not tanks and healers and stuff like that, but kind of, right? Those things come out of human interactions. That means a lot of the parameters have been set for us. But I would be curious out there, if anyone's listening, like, what is the game? What are the parameters? And how can we ask some questions where the objective isn't just to say, hey, look at the bleakness of the world that we live in. Look at the bleakness of the country that we live in. I still believe that this is a place of potential and opportunity. Maybe we've lost some of the optimism. And I think I don't think that's dogmatic to say. I think one of the issues that we have is if you openly say, like, yeah, people are kind of upset about America, then you're not a patriot, right? Then you're not, when you look at these Gallup polls, for example, and this isn't meant, again, I'm attempting to be as politically neutral as I can be. That being said, the politically conservative people tend to be the ones who that are higher on the scale of, or there are more of them in the extremely proud to be American category than the more liberal side, and that can be weaponized. And I also think that can be a refreshing, good thing to ask certain questions if we're willing to, define success in some way or another. So anyway, I think, I guess one of the main, these are some fun games. I think the way America is represented in video games today is maybe a little bit on the farcical side, on the funny side, and maybe a little bit on the dangerous side, on the not so funny side. And I wonder if the games present us with an opportunity to not just be a reaction to the way people feel about this country, but maybe an opportunity to fix some things. Maybe?
Love it. Yep.
So I agree. I think this 4th of July, we can reflect on that. We should play some games on the 4th of July.
Let's do that.
Play. My family's going to be playing. We're going to have some more like Mario Kart tournaments, and cool. When we have a day off, it's lots of games. The board games come out, the video game tournaments come out, and we all just play games together and have fun. So ultimately, I hope that everyone has fun on the 4th of July, spending time with loved ones and enjoying the day. But also a time of reflection. I think we feel differently about this country on this 4th of July as opposed to other ones. So let's use playing games to solve some problems.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, anything else?
Agree.
What did I miss?
Nothing.
I said everything. Everything that needs to be said to solve everything has been said in this podcast on this day.
I'm just nodding right now because I can't add any additional words.
Yeah.
You done it.
It's all been said. All right, everybody.
Agree.
Like and subscribe. Please continue this discussion. If you have any ideas, what are your favorite America games? Please tell us. And what kind of America games would you like to play? Please tell us in the comments. Other than that, let's play some games.
See you next week.
Bye, everybody.